Hey, what's up guys? It's Art Book Addiction here, and we're here with a new artist journey video. So today, we're going to be talking about letting your work become itself, okay? Or how to not force your work, alright? So, in the artist journey, you will come upon pieces that may not work, right? Maybe not working for you. It's just not turning out the way you want, and it's just really frustrating you, and you're kind of stuck, and there's like something wrong, but you don't really know what. And a lot of times, people, what they'll do is they'll try to force it, right? They'll try to maybe there's something in the work that you feel is working, and you want to push the work to make it good, right? And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't work, right? I'm not going to say that, like, 'cause sometimes you just need to push a little further to make it work, but there are ways to do that naturally, and there's ways that you're like actually just forcing it, and it's making it worse, in fact, right? So that's what we'll be talking about today. Before we start the video, please hit that like, hit that subscribe, check out my Princeton Patreon if you want to support the channel. Consider becoming a channel member. And with that, let's get into it. So, when it comes to artwork, right, I want to kind of paint like a picture for you guys, right? So, I want you to visualize your artwork as like your children, okay? And when raising your children, okay, there are times where the thing that the artwork wants to be, okay, versus what you want it to be, might collide, right? Like you and your or child rather. So you and your child, right? Like they want one thing, you want another thing, right? This is actually very relevant because of like God of War Ragnarok, right? This is kind of like the reason why I started thinking about this, right? There is the nature of the work, okay, right? Sometimes the work wants to pull you in a direction that you not necessarily didn't want. You didn't know you didn't think it was going to go that way when you just started, okay? And there is the temptation to not go with where it's going, and instead trying to force what you want the piece to be to make that happen, right? And it's a very subtle line, okay? It's a very subtle line that it's hard to detect, right? But maybe you're putting in something that you really want in there, and it's just not working, okay? It's just not working the way you thought it was, right? And it kind of goes against what the piece is, the flow of the piece, we're in the direction that it's going, and you're putting something in it that just doesn't work, and you have to make the call of, should I remove it? Should I keep it? Can I try to make it work? Is it gonna work, right? And all I gotta say for that is, so what you want to do is always work in the natural flow of the art piece, okay, right? If the current is going one way, right, and this is the current of the piece, this is not oh, this is what's popular, you know what I mean, like, not, this is mainstream, you know what I mean, like, not that, but like your piece will flow in a natural way, right? And you want to go with that flow, right? You want to accept the flow, right? And sometimes your piece will take a divergent direction, right? Completely different, right? So let's say, like, okay, a more practical example, right? Let's say you had a piece, you imagined it, right? You imagine it very purple, right? A very purple piece, right? Those colors, the color scheme in your head was this way, right? But as you implement it, right, you actually find that you're like, I kind of want to go more blue, right? Maybe this would fit better as blue, right? But then you have the vision in your head versus the vision that's actually approaching you right now, right? Like dynamically, right? And what you want to go with is the dynamic, okay? If the piece is going in that direction, right, naturally, and you're like, you didn't intend it, right, go that way. okay, go the natural way. All right, go in the way of the least resistance, right? um and it's cool because, right, um it allows the piece to surprise you. Okay, it allows for the piece itself to like show itself to you in a mysterious way. Okay, and it stops you from forcing things on the piece that it may not want. Okay, now how what does that look like? Okay, when you're forcing something, right? Usually when you're doing something like that, when you're forcing something, it looks overworked. Okay, there's something about it that it's just you put too many layers, you try to make it work, you've redrawn it a million times, and it's like you remember it looking better before, right? And you're like, this is like, before it was so fresh, it was new, if it had a good feeling to it, right? Now it's like, there's too many layers on it. It's hard to decipher what is what. You know what I mean? It looks like there's too much detail, and like it's detracting from the rest of the piece, right? And these are based on your gut feelings, your instincts as an artist, right? But everyone knows when something looks overworked. You get what I'm saying, right? So that's a very common way that it comes, right? Another way is there is something in the piece where you've you've really worked that one thing, right? But you haven't put time and effort to putting in the other parts, right? For example, like you're working on your here's a good example, right? So this piece is fine. It's not an example of overwork or anything. I think this piece is working, right? So if you look, right, there is the figure, right, and then there's the background. Okay, so what I'm talking about, right, is if you only worked on the figure and try to make that like 100% right out the bat, okay, and then you start working on the environment way later, okay, but then those two things don't mesh together well, right? Because you haven't built them up together. You know what I mean? Because you like this one aspect a lot, but you didn't focus on the other aspect, right? Because an art piece has to be a holistic collection, okay? Background and subject, not subject matter. What's it? Focal point, okay? Focal point plus environment, okay? Right? Those things have to mesh well together, right? So if you're forcing one, and then you decide to add another thing, right? That's another way. Let's say you have like a beautiful environment, right? And then you're like, oh, now I want to add a figure to it, right? But you didn't plan on it, right? This could work sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't work, right? And that's because you're getting in the way of the flow of the nature of the piece. You know what I mean, right? Because the piece, from the beginning, you had the intention of just letting it be an environment piece, right? And then you're like, no, now I want to add a figure, right? And you could add it, okay? And then now it's up to you to make that judgment call, right? I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying it's not right, but you need to, like, you could implement it and see how it feels in the piece, right? If it doesn't feel right, then just remove it, dude. Then just remove it, okay? Paint over it again, paint what you had before, or just scrape it, or just undo it, right? Put it on a different, like if you're doing it on a computer, do it on another layer. Is it working? Yes, no, right? If not, remove it, okay? Very easy, right? Let the piece be what it wants to be, okay? Sometimes a piece may be done sooner than you thought, okay? And then you have your inclination, your natural inclination is like, well, maybe I need to add more. Maybe I need to and the piece is like, no, I'm done. I'm a finished piece. I'm done. You don't need to work on me anymore. I feel good, right? That's usually the spot you want to leave it at, okay? Where the piece itself tells you that it's done, okay? Right? You as the artist are there to listen to the artwork, okay? To guide it to where it wants to be, okay? To where the finish of its natural finish is, okay? Right? And the better you get at listening to your piece, the better the artwork will turn out. Okay, because sometimes people definitely overwork shit. Okay, they're definitely trying to push their own idea on the piece, right? And that's like, you would think that that's not possible because you are the artist and you make those judgment calls, right? But you have to understand that the art is its own entity, right? Each art piece is its own entity, right? And it's telling you, it's having a conversation with you, right? And if you are someone who doesn't listen, right? If you're someone who's like trying to push something on the piece, right? Would you be happy if that was happening to you, if you were a person and someone's like pushing shit on you, right? No, right? You want to have a conversation, okay? You want to like reveal the piece to yourself, right? And the piece unveils itself to you, right? You get what I'm saying, right? And it's that dichotomy, that language, right? It's like, when you're speaking to the muses, right? The muses are having a conversation with you, right? And the piece is a natural extension of that. It's like, like you and your muse's child, right? And you have to work together to let the child become what it wants to be, okay? Right? Like with Atreus, you get what I'm saying? And it's not the biggest deal if you have a piece where you force something, right? But it's important to know when it happens and when you're doing it. If you're doing it, then you have to realize, like, okay, I'm doing this thing, right? Unnecessary. I'm getting in the way of the piece, okay? Right? Let the piece just go where it wants to go, right? And like sometimes you gotta follow. Sometimes you're guiding the way. Sometimes you gotta follow, right? And often, right, when a piece is not working, there might be the case where maybe you didn't work on the right parts, right? Or sometimes, right, you need to let the piece, just like sometimes you like you make something and you're like, okay, that works. Make another thing, okay, that works, right? You make this thing, it's not working. Like, what? Why is this one thing not working? And it's kind of distracting, right? Sometimes you just need to put the rest of the image together. You get what I'm saying, right? Maybe like it's not working currently, but it could work later. But because there isn't more context to it, it doesn't work right now. Okay? You get what I'm saying, right? So instead of trying to fix that one thing, like, oh, I'm gonna redraw it. Like maybe you should just leave it, work on the rest, and then like because there's the rest of it, that part will click. You get what I'm saying, right? Again, art is a holistic thing. Okay, it needs to come together, like at the same time. You know what I mean? When I build art, I want to gradually work, right, and make sure that everything, like I can work on one thing a little bit more, but I have to make sure that the other things around it are at a certain level that I want, right? You know what I mean? Not everything has to be 100%, okay? Honestly, you don't want that either because it's the hierarchy of detail, you know what I mean? But that's a whole nother game, right? But the whole point is to just let the piece speak to you, let it have a conversation with you, okay? Let it become what it wants to be, right? And you'll be happier, and the piece will be happy, right? And people will enjoy the chemistry between you and the canvas, okay? You know what I mean? You, the muse, the canvas, right? And you and the piece will speak to people and will know that, like, that you, the, like, you, the father, right? Kratos, right? You and the piece have a really nice what is it called? Not symmetry, symbiosis, okay? Like you have a nice chemistry, a nice flowing of energies, right? You work together, right? So that when the time comes, right, it's a good representation of you, but also the work is also a representation of itself. You get what I'm saying, right? Like a child, right? You create the ingredients, right? You put them together, right? But the food turns out the way it turns out, okay? And you could only really guide it along, okay? But yeah, I think we can end the video here, guys. Please, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like, hit that subscribe, Check my Prince of Patreon if you want to support the channel. Consider becoming a channel member, right? Ring that bell for notification, all that bullshit. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks a lot.